Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on how to install PyCharm on macOS. And I'm going to begin by saying this. I'm creating this tutorial for the use of students in my classes. Both at the University of Illinois and at UWM. Now, I'm putting it out onto YouTube, and some of you may have found your way here on your own, in which case you're welcome to stay. But I just want to forewarn you that this is tailored to the opportunities and the needs of people in my classes. So, for instance, we use some free software that's only available to university people. That's not available to everyone on that basis. So, forewarned is forearmed. The other caveat that I'd like to mention here is that I'd like this tutorial video to have a life of at least a year. And that's going to mean that the versions of software that I'm using here, I'm recording this in January 2018 for the spring 2018 semester. But for people in my current class, well, you're probably going to use the same versions of everything that I'm using. But for people in the summer or the fall or whenever at a subsequent time, the version of the operating system that you're using or the version of the software that you're using is probably going to be different. And my general advice here is install the latest of everything. There are times when some combination of the latest things is broken, in which case I try to get the word out in my class that, yeah, you want the latest of things, but not this and that together. But without that warning, just try to install the latest version of everything, and that's pretty good. Pretty good advice, and the workflow and the interactions that it takes to get it done maybe are not going to be perfectly the same, but they're going to be pretty darn close. Okay, so where are we here? Well, we're going to install PyCharm, and we're going to install PyCharm Professional. And before we do that, we want to have installed Anaconda. So if you haven't installed Anaconda, I have a tutorial on that. So stop this one, back up, play the installing Anaconda tutorial, and get that done, and then come back and join up here again. Okay, so how do I know I've installed Anaconda? Well, first, let's look at the version of everything I have. So, of the operating system, let's see what I have. I'm using macOS High Sierra 10.13.2. Here in late January, that's the latest. Okay. And how do I know I have Anaconda installed? Well, I can look down here. I see that I have an icon of the dock for Anaconda Navigator. So let's click on that and just see that. So Anaconda Navigator can be peskily slow sometimes. Okay, and so I've got Anaconda Navigator, and let's click and look at the environments that I've created. So I've got the base environment, okay, and I've got three environments that I created for use cases that I would expect to have. One, I've got one for plain old Python programming. Okay, and if I click on that, we'll see we're using a Python interpreter of 3.6.4. That's great. in my classes, we always use Python 3. Okay. I've also got an environment that I created for Django projects. And the one that I think I like the best is one that's called Django 11 also. I created this at the command line. And we can look at this and see the Python, again, the interpreter is 3.6.4. And then if we go and look and say, what version of Django do we have? We've got the latest version of Django that's available now, which is Django 1.11.9. Django 11, as they call it. Okay? So that's what we have here. In terms of what Anaconda environment we have, we've got the latest version of what they call Anaconda 3. Okay? So, let's quit that. And let's say we don't care to see that warning again. And let's think about where we're going to do. Okay, so students in my university classes are able to get licenses for JetBrains products, including PyCharm. So how do you find your way to that? Well, I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to go and look on my schedule for the course I'm teaching this semester. So let me do that. So at UWM this semester, I'm doing a 691, and here on my list of things to do, one of them in install PyCharm Professional is a link to the JetBrains free individual licenses for students and faculty members. So if you haven't already done this, go there, and that's the link they have today. And as long as you have a university email account, you ought to be able to apply for this all products pack. So you're entitled to install all the products that you see here. Now, the only thing that we're going to install is PyCharm Professional, but you can install more. Okay, and I've done that, and there's a link for apply now. Okay, so you do that and you get an account. All right, so once you have your account, how do you download your software? Well, let's go to jetbrains.com. Okay, we go here, and there's a little person icon over here for your account. So click on that, and you need to log in. So you're gonna, whatever university email you used. I use my university email from UWM, and put in my password. And I sign in. And I'm not going to remember my password quite yet here. Okay, so we got a couple of possibilities here. One of the things that we're going to do is we're just going to go and download PyCharm, and then we're going to register our license to it. It's pretty quick and pretty easy to do. If you go down to the bottom here, though, now this isn't the place. There is a place where you can find out information about something that's called JetBrains Toolbox. And JetBrains Toolbox is a tool that allows you to install all these products that we see here, and you can enable all of them provided that you have one of these academic accounts. I'm not going to do that today because one, it takes longer, and two, it didn't really work that well when I practiced it yesterday with my macOS virtual machine, and it wasn't really working too well on my Windows 10 virtual machine either. But I think those are virtual machine issues and not real operating system issues. So could you go ahead and use JetBrains Toolbox with your academic license? Yeah, you could. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on PyCharm. Okay, and this might just be the product page. Yeah, this is the product page. But we're on the product page. We're using the professional one, okay? One reason we're doing it is it's the fully featured version, and we're entitled to a free version. So why not? There is a PyCharm edu, as I call it, that's a community product that's free. And for my Intro to Python courses, generally that's enough. But for my courses where we use Django, which is what I'm concentrating on in the current semester, the Django features are not available in the community version at this point. So we're using PyCharm Professional, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate the install for. So let's click on Download Now. Okay, and you can see we could take the Professional or the Community Edition. Well, we want to download the free trial for the Professional Edition, and then we'll register it. It turns into a licensed install at that point. So we're going to click on Download. Okay, and let's see. Am I going to agree to my email instructions and all that kind of stuff? I'm already on their list, right? So I'm not going to say yes to any of this stuff. And what's happening in the meantime is that my download file, my DMG file for macOS has already come down. So I can stop my dialogue with the website, and I'm going to click on the DMG file for PyCharm Professional, and we can see that it's starting to open it. Okay, and this is a typical installer where you click on the content to the left, this PyCharm, and you pull it to the right into Applications folder, and that's how it gets installed. And now you see it actually being done. Okay, instead of it metaphorically being done with that dialogue. And here you can see we've got PyCharm, so that's it. All right. So for right now, that's enough. I'm going to close my browser, and I'm going to open PyCharm with a double click in my Applications folder. And we can see it getting started here. Okay. And before I do anything else, I'm going to right click on that and pick Options and say I want to keep it in the dock. So I don't want to go hunting for this application anymore. All right, so that'll be good. So PyCharm's an application downloaded from the internet. That's fine. I want to open it anyway, so open. Okay, and let's see. Import PyCharm settings. I don't have any prior settings, so I'm just going to say OK, do not import settings. And I'm going to accept the privacy policy. And now I've got a couple of ways that I could activate this, but for me and you, we're going to use our JetBrains academic account. So I'm going to put in my email, and I'm going to put in my password. and I'm going to activate it. Okay. And we're getting a little thing. It's telling me about UI themes. I like the default one, which is fine. There is a Darkula one. You could pick that. And next it tells you about launcher scripts. We're not going to fool around with those. Next, featured plugins. And for the courses I'm teaching in the current semester, fine. I can imagine on some data sciences courses, I might want to install the plugin for R language support or something like that. But other than that, I'm not currently using any of these things that they're featuring. So I'm going to click Start Using PyCharm. And now here we can see the splash screen coming up. And we have the opportunity to create a new project. Okay? So what are we going to do here? Well, let's see. First of all, I'm going to take that installer and close it. So let's say we want to create a new project. In my first use case, for people who are just taking a Python programming course, we just want a plain old Python 3 programming project and environment, right? So click on Create New Project. Okay, on the left side in this navigation panel, you pick your kind of project. Okay, and pure Python is a plain old Python project. That's what we want. Okay, where does it want to put it? Well, it wants to put it in the macOS file system under Users, My ID, and then under PyCharm Projects, which it's created to hold the projects. And I usually like to keep mine there. So now you have to come up with the name for your project. You don't want your project called Untitled. And I'm just going to call mine First Python Project. And because these project names form directories, I usually like to not have internal spaces in the name, and it's very Python-like to form names by having lowercase letters and separating the words by underscores. So first underscore Python underscore project is very Pythonic, as they say. So that's good. Now, we're not just going to say create because we want to make sure that we're going to get the right environment. You know, when we installed Anaconda, we created an environment for plain old Python development, and we want to make sure that we've got that and the interpreter that's part of that. So down here, right underneath, there's a little kind of a triangle and the text project interpreter, new virtual environment. Let's click on that. Okay. And we could either create a new virtual environment if we didn't already have one, okay, and if we wanted to create one with Conda, we could, okay. So had we not done that with the Anaconda tools, we could do it now. But as soon as we already created one, we just want to go find it and hook it up. So there's another radio button down here for existing interpreter. Okay. And if we look at the drop down, well, we don't have any suggestions. And that's because we don't have anything hooked up yet. So instead of the drop down, go to the right where we have this little gear wheel and click on that. And you can either add local or add remote. Well, this is an environment we set up here, so it's local. Add local. Okay. And now it would be nice if we had a drop down that was already populated, but again, we don't. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to we're going to go to the ... button to the right of the drop down. So click on the ... And here we just see the file system. We see everything that's under our own user ID. And that's fine because when we installed Anaconda, we installed it under our own user ID. So it turns out with the options that we used in that Anaconda tutorial, Anaconda is under our own user ID with it's not under our own user ID. It is under the file system under Anaconda 3. So I take back that it's under our user ID. It's just under Anaconda 3. Okay, so what I do is, let's go back. So I click on that ... It takes me here, and then I just scroll up to find Anaconda 3, and I open that. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to point to the proper Conda environment, or env. So where are they? Well, they're in the envs directory, envs. Okay, and then we've got okay, the third one looks like the one we want, plain old Python programming. So expand that. Okay. And what do we want to do? Well, what we want to do is we want to show the interpreter, the Python interpreter that we want to use. Well, where's that program? Well, in Unix-based operating system, it's in the bin directory. So let's open bin. And then it's probably called Python 3.6. So let's look at that. So Python, there's something called Python 3.6. And this is kind of a link to the actual file. But let's just find this Python 3.6 and click on OK. All right, what else could we do? Well, make available to other projects will allow this particular will allow this environment to come up on the menu system earlier, okay, when we're taking the drop downs. And that's fine. I'd like to share this one amongst a couple of my plain old Python programming projects. So I'm just going to click on that, and that'll make it easier to reuse. And then go down and click on OK. And so we can see here that things have been filled in. So the radio button for existing interpreter is still pressed, and the interpreter is Python with 3.6 in the environment plain old Python programming, just what we want. So we click on create, and it shows us some tips. If you look down at the bottom, you can see some work going on. You can see in the middle here, indexing. So it takes a little bit of time to actually build the project directories. So, and there's actually a progress bar over to the right. And now all that's cleared and we're ready to start. So we should be able to, well, it hasn't completely cleared. Here it's doing something else. So you can watch this stuff at the bottom, and it usually helps just to wait for it to calm down. So it's updating skeletons for the environments, for the environment that we picked. And okay, I think it's done now. You can also see there's information down here about your license. You can see it's registered to me for educational use only. That's because I have an academic license, just like you will. Okay, and let's just prove that we can make a regular old Python project work. So we're going to go over and we're going to right click on the name of our project and say we want a new Python file. And of course, people typically do hello world. Instead, I usually do goodbye cruel world. So I'm going to give it a Pythonic kind of name, all lowercase, separated by underscores. Goodbye cruel world. Do that. Say OK. It's going to generate the code for this, which is going to be empty. And I'm going to come in here and no, there are a lot of different conventions, but in a lot of textbooks you'll see the files begin with a comment that has the name of the file that you're in. So you'd have a # to make a comment, and then you would say goodbye cruel world.py. Okay, and then we skip a couple lines. And in my Python classes, we use the convention that we always have a procedure called main that has our mainline code in it. So we say def and then the name main. And then we have a parameter list, which is empty. And this kind of line ends with a colon to start the code block. Okay. And usually when I put in a main like this, you just see a red squiggly that says, I need some code in the code block. Some dummy code that you can always put in is the word pass, which means don't do anything at all. And now I'm going to skip 2 lines. And I'm going to have the one line of code that invokes the main procedure. So it's just going to say main, paren. Okay. So now I've got a program that doesn't do anything, but it's got the right infrastructure. So what do I want this to do? Well, instead of pass, I want to print something. So in Python, we do that with print. And then we have parens, which is an argument list. And we've got one argument, which is the string that we want to do. And in Python, we typically set off character strings with single quotes or apostrophes. Okay, so I type 1, I get the matching one is automatically generated for me. And then I'm just going to type in the message, goodbye, cruel world. There we go. All right, so that's that. We don't really have to save in this PyCharm RDE, but I always want to make sure it has saved. And in the macOS version, you can force a save by being in the editor somewhere and typing Command S. So I forced a save that way. It would have happened automatically anyway. And now I need to run it. Once you get going, you can find that there's a lot of different ways to run code. There are lots of controls that you can make you run. But I don't see any of them active right now. So I'm just going to, in the editor, I'm going to right click and I'm going to pick Run Goodbye Cruel World. And we'll see at the bottom, a console is going to pop up, which is a Python console, and it's going to say Goodbye Cruel World. Pretty nice. Would you agree? Okay. So if we look down towards the bottom, in the very in the bar that goes on the bottom, there's a squarish kind of icon. If we hover over it, you can see we can have a bunch of different things down in this lower panel. And right now the thing we have is the Python console. So if we just said Python console, well, that's not what we had. All right, I'll take that back. So what did we have? Oh, we had run. So let's go back to run. Yeah, that was run. Silly me. So let's go down and hover over that again, and let's say terminal. Okay. Okay. And so what do you get when you go to terminal? Well, you get out. You get a command line terminal. Okay. And with these Python projects, the way we've configured it, it's really handy. First of all, you are in the directory for your project. So if you need to do some command line things, that's fine. The other thing is that what we've activated the environment that we're using from Anaconda. So we are in plain old Python programming environment. So for instance, we could say conda list, and it would give us a list of all the packages installed, and we would see that they're all there. And we said we've got Python 3.6.4, which is what we wanted to have there. Okay, so we've created a simple Python project. We've only created one Python module file, goodbyecruelworld.py, but we were able to make that work, and we're able to run it, and we're able to see what happened if we opened terminal. And one of the most important things is that both when we're doing the run and when we're doing the terminal, and also if we had asked for a console, all this stuff is running in the environment that we set up with Conda, the one that's called plain old Python programming. Okay, and that's just what we want. Okay, now I'm going to close this project. Okay, I'm going to say, well, we come back out here, we can create another project. We'd say, okay, good. That's we want a Python project. Let's call this. We don't want to call it Untitled. Let's call it second Python project. Okay, that looks good. And let's try to figure out the interpreter. So come down here to this line underneath and click on that. And we want to use an existing interpreter. And what does it want to use? Well, it wants to use Python 3.6 in the environment and the Anaconda 3 and plain old Python programming. That's there because we checked that box before that said that we were willing to share it with other projects. This is just what we want. So we can say now, create. And the same thing, every time you fire up a new project, there's a little bit of stuff that goes on down the bottom here. You have to wait a little while for it to happen. The longer your, the slower your processor, the longer it takes, etc. This didn't take quite as long because it's the second one of this type, and we're ready to go. Okay, so we're not going to do anything to this, but I just wanted to let you see that happen. Okay, so this semester, I've got a bunch of people who are using, who are going to be using Django, and so they're going to be creating Django projects. And for the people who are in those classes, you're going to find out that Django projects get created a lot of different ways. People want you to create them at the command line. So there's code you can type in at the command line that will create a whole kind of Django project infrastructure, in which case we have to learn how to open that with PyCharm. But let's say we wanted to create the project from scratch in PyCharm. Well, how would we do that? Well, we'd do it like this. Okay. So again, we've got 2 projects already. We want to create a third, create new project. And over in the navigation panel, we don't want a pure Python project, we want a Django project. Okay. And we don't want it to be untitled, so maybe I'd call this something like first Django project. Okay, that seems to be working well. In terms of the interpreter and the environment, well, the interpreter's fine, but the environment's wrong. Okay, we don't want the environment for plain old Python programming. We want one, in this case, for Django 11. So let's click on here. And it says existing interpreter. Okay. Again, we want to use an existing environment because we already built it with Conda. Right, that's fine. But then let's go over here, look at the drop-down. That's all we have on the drop-down is the wrong one. Okay, now we've got to click on the gear. And we don't want to add remote. This is going to be local here. Add local. Okay. And let's see. Is there anything in the drop-down? No, nothing in the drop-down. So let's click on the box with the 3 dots. And again, where do we find the environments? Well, under Anaconda 3, that's up from where we are here. Anaconda 3, open it up. Okay, we're looking for the environments, envs, open that up. Okay, and the one that I like is the one that I created at the command line and in the Conda tutorial. That's called Django 11 also. Okay, now here's the trick. We're not only identifying the environment, but just like we did the last time, within the environment, we need to point to the Python interpreter that we're going to use. So open the env called Django 11 also, and then open bin. Okay, and then we're going to look for Django 3.6. I'm sorry, Python 3.6. And there it is. Okay, and it's again, this is actually a sort of a placeholder file that points at the right file for 3.6, but this will work just fine. Okay, this is a logical file, a pointer to the proper physical file. So Python 3.6 and then OK. Okay, and do I want to make this available to all projects? For right now, I'm going to say yes. A lot of times, depending upon the Django project that you have, you install a lot of really individualized things. So do you want to share those between projects? Well, no. So you might have one environment per actual Django project that you're doing. Let's say that, and then so then your project name would probably be part of your environment name. But here we've kind of named this as though it's going to be shareable, so I'm gonna click and say make available to all projects. Okay, so now we come in. It says, note, Django will be installed on the selected interpreter. That sounds good. And let's click Create. And it's doing some more installing and stuff like that. And I've got to admit that some of these tools that we use with Django tend to fight with each other a bit. The tutorials that we do the Django Girls tutorial, and we also do, we use the Django Unleashed book, which is one gigantic tutorial. they both show you creating your project at the command line, in which case we would be taking that project and sort of opening it with PyCharm after it had already been created with command line tools. Okay, so here we are. We're not going to learn how to do Django, but we are going to learn some things. For instance, Django projects all have a program associated with them in their directory structure called manage, which runs a lot of the Django infrastructure. And you can do that by going to tools, run manage.pytask. So we're going to do that. And we're going to see things happening at the bottom. So we're going to get in the bottom panel, we're going to get, we say that we're running manage.py on our first Django project. And for instance, you can do things in here like run the development server. So we can say run server right here. And here we have to press enter twice. And we don't have a lot of code here to actually run on the server, but we've got the development server running. Okay? And again, we've got this little control down in the lower left that if we hover over it, we can see, we can go to the manage py. We can go to that. We can also open up terminal. Okay. And you'll see here, it'd be really nice to say that this puts us in the right directory and also activates the right environment, but it currently doesn't do that. That worked well for a plain old Python project, but here you can see there's no environment active. So if, for instance, we say conda env list to list the environments, we can see that there's the base Django 11 also. That's the one that we want to use. Django 11 development and all that kind of stuff, but there's nothing active, not even the base. So we can say, for instance, we can say conda activate Django 11 also. Sorry, let's just say active, let's try this, source activate Django 11 also. And now that works. So some of these things, commands have flexibility of syntax in certain situations, but it turns out that to activate an environment here, you have to say source on macOS. You have to say source activate environment name. And now you can just do things in your Django project directory, and you are running under the proper environment that has the right version of the Python interpreter, but also has all the packages and all the modules that you need for your project because you created them in your environment. Okay, so this is enough to whet your appetite, and certainly for those in my Django course, more to come. Okay, so that's it. Let's just take a look at a couple more things. I'm going to close these editor panels. I'm going to close the project. in the Mac version, when you close a project, you come back out here to the dialog box where you can either create a new project or open an existing project. It doesn't work quite like this in the Windows 10 version. It's not so well behaved. When you close it, it's closed. So in the Windows version. So generally speaking, the behavior of the macOS version is quite good. And then, of course, when we want to close it, we close it. Okay, and I just want to remind you, you can find your projects by going to, let's see, you go to your hard drive, and then you can go to Users, and you can go to Your ID, and you can go to PyCharm Projects, and here are the projects we created. I'd like to go to the icon here where they're in a list, and it's a little bit easier to read their names. Those are the 3 projects that we just created. So pretty easy stuff. So a lot of fun with this product. A lot of further tutorials depending upon the course that you're in. Have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.